Welcome to the GAMERamble video review for Arcade Spirits, narrated by me, Dark Cloud. As always, the full text version of this review can also be found on the GAMERamble website linked below. The TLDR for Arcade Spirits is that it's a visual novel that is packed with romance, great writing and plenty of nostalgia for anyone who grew up practically living in arcades during the 80s. It features a diverse cast of characters that are all interesting enough that you want to spend more time getting to know them. The story is perhaps not the most original, but it still managed to draw us in and keep us interested right to the very end. It's also one of the most inclusive visual novels we have played, but nothing about it feels forced or tacked on, which is even better. If you love visual novels and want something a little different from the usual fare, then Arcade Spirits comes highly recommended. Gameplay receives a 9 out of 10. The game features plenty of choices that actually matter and a very engaging storyline to keep you hooked. Graphics receives a 9 out of 10. The game is bright and colourful with plenty of backdrops and great character designs. Sound receives a 9 out of 10. The synthwave soundtrack is great and the voice acting even better. The overall score for Arcade Spirits is 9 out of 10. And now for the full review. It really is hard to describe how awesome arcades were to people who haven't really experienced them in their heydays. As great as retro compilations are for preserving classic games, none of them can replicate the feeling of standing in front of a real cabinet while soaking in the atmosphere around you. Having had the privilege of wasting entirely too much time and money in a rather large arcade in our youth, we were looking forward to playing Arcade Spirits. It's a combination of visual novel and dating simulation that takes place in an alternative timeline where the 1983 video game crash never happened. This gives the game the perfect excuse to use an arcade as a backdrop for the story, while setting it in the future instead of the past. Arcade Spirits opens in 20XX, with the protagonist continuing their bad luck streak when it comes to employment. You're free to select their pronoun, as well as adjust their hairstyle, skin tone, hair color, as well as eye color. This type of customization is quite unique for the genre, and gives the game a more personal touch compared to the visual novels where your character is either a faceless nobody, or have a preset look and personality. Right off the bat, the game demonstrates that the choices you make actually have an impact on the story, and it's not just here to provide you the illusion of freedom. After your BFF and flatmate Juniper urges you to install an AI digital assistant app on your phone to help you find a new job, you can choose between doing so or ignoring her advice. One choice will get you on the path towards happiness, love and fulfillment, while the other can wrap up the story before it even had a chance to begin. Not every choice in Arcade Spirits is as drastic, but the game certainly doesn't pull any punches. The primary setting for the game is an old but fairly popular arcade called Francine's Arcade Funplex. Francine has run the place since the 80s and appoint your character after a rather unusual job interview. What happens from there is up to you and the choices you make, as well as the way in which you interact with the people around you. The arcade setting definitely hits all the nostalgia buttons, but it's the characters that really make this game special. Arcade Spirits features quite a big cast, and you're even able to romance 7 of them, if that's what you want. Usually with this type of game, there is an obvious romance route with one of the characters, while the rest feel more like side characters, but this is not the case here. Every one of the characters are not just interesting, but also fleshed out in terms of their personalities. In fact, Arcade Spirits is one of the very few games where we want to go back and complete the romantic route for each character just to discover more about them and experience more of the great writing. Initially, the characters seem like they're all going to be stereotypes, but spend more time getting to know them and you'll discover that nothing could be further from the truth. For example, Queen Bee, the resident pro gamer who has a penchant for swearing and aggressively thrashing everyone who challenges her in their favorite game, also has a softer side and fear of rejection. Ashley, the bubbly cosplayer who works as the mascot at the arcade, might seem like the most happy-go-lucky person there, but also has her insecurities. Each time we play through the game, we discover new things about characters that were not apparent unless we spent enough time with them, which is great for the replay value. What's really interesting is the way in which the game approaches the player character. Apart from the customization options at the start of the game, you also get to determine the personality of your character and how they react to the choices and challenges that you face during the story. If you want to be quirky and overcome challenges with jokes and humor, then that is what you can do. If you prefer being kind and trying to come up with solutions that will benefit everyone, then that's an option too. Or you can try to be more level-headed instead of basing decisions on your emotions. Iris, your AI assistant, will keep track of all the choices you have made, so you can see at all times what your strengths and weaknesses are. She also keeps tabs on your relationships with the other characters, and will tell you which ones are a match for your personality. It's quite a neat system, but we recommend disabling the icons that show you which trades are tied to the choices, and instead pick the ones based on your own judgment, at least for the first playthrough. You're obviously free to pick a personality type and stick with it, but mixing things up and really thinking about your choices instead is a lot more fun. In some situations, your options will be limited to only the ones that are related to your stronger stats, which can lead to different outcomes. Arcade Spirits is split up into 8 chapters, each of which throws a certain number of twists and turns your way. Initially, the game is all about getting to know your co-workers, as well as the regulars at the arcade, while also handling the issues that crop up. Eventually, the stakes become much higher, and you have to deal with all manner of stressful situations. Because the story is so good, we don't want to give away anything, but as mentioned earlier, Arcade Spirits definitely doesn't pull any punches. The game does feature plenty of humor, but it's also not afraid to tackle more serious topics head-on. Even the romantic aspects are handled in a very classy and believable manner, while giving you the freedom to pursue anyone who catches your interest. The pronoun and gender you pick at the start of the game doesn't lock you out of certain romances like in other games, and neither does the game make a big fuss about your romantic choices. Instead, everyone simply treats it like two people who are falling in love, which is how it should be. As sweet as the romances are, everything is kept strictly PG, so players expecting the typical level of visual novel fan service will have to look elsewhere. In fact, the chapter during which everyone is decked out in their beachwear is about as risque as things get. The art style used for Arcade Spirits is definitely a good match for the game, and features a very diverse cast of characters. The designs for each character is spot on in terms of their personality, and the whole game has a very vibrant feel. We also love the fact that Arcade Spirits lavish just as much detail on relatively minor characters, so you actually get to see their sprites instead of just reading the descriptions as in a lot of other games. In addition, the game features a lot of different backgrounds, so you're not just stuck in one arcade for the duration of the story. Neither the characters or the backgrounds feature a lot of animations, but overall things look great. The characters have enough different outfits and expressions to make them feel a little bit more alive, and many of the backgrounds have minor animated elements to prevent them from feeling too static. It's a pity that the game doesn't feature more of the traditional visual novel style CGs, but it's understandable when you take the customization options of your character into consideration. Another aspect of Arcade Spirits that really impressed us is the audio. The game favors a neat synthwave soundtrack, which is a perfect match for the futuristic arcade setting. It also uses a wide variety of sound effects to liven things up. However, the highlight is the voice acting, and this is one area where Fiction Factory games definitely didn't skimp on quality. Every one of the characters is voiced by pretty notable names, and it makes a huge difference. Although not every single line of dialogue is voiced, the ones that are sound really professional and makes the whole experience so much more immersive. The controls are the usual visual novel fare, so you can click through dialogue with your left mouse button or the enter key on your keyboard. You can also save at any time, and the game provides you with more than enough save slots, so we recommend making good use of them if you want to explore all of the story branches. Overall, there isn't a whole lot that we can fault about Arcade Spirits. It's clearly a labour of love, and the amount of care and attention that has been lavished on it really shines through. The story is a little on the short side, but most players will want to jump straight back in and try another route after completing the game. The writing is really good, and it's been a while since we played a game where we would have loved to spend more time with the characters and the world they inhabit. The fact that it's also nostalgic for people who grew up frequenting arcades obviously plays a big role in this, but the excellent writing should suck just about anyone in. The character customization aspect is nice, but feels a bit limited as you only have 3 different hairstyles to choose from and can't really change any physical characteristics. This is still a lot more than what we typically see in visual novels, so we can't complain too much. At the end of the day, Arcade Spirits is a great game with great characters that all have their own interesting personalities. The dramas and challenges that take place throughout the different chapters are perhaps not that original and unique, especially if you watch a lot of 80s movies and sitcoms, but it's still a blast to play. Hopefully the game does well enough to warrant a sequel, as we would love to see more of these characters and their world. We would have loved to elaborate more on the story and characters, but this is the type of game where you really need to experience everything for yourself firsthand. The game does have a free demo, so if you have any doubt about whether you like the style or setting, give it a try first. Thanks for joining me for this Arcade Spirits PC review. Remember to like, subscribe and share. Until next time.